So welcome to the Mathias Ham Historic Site. My name is Joseph Rapp. I'm a lead here in the Education Department. And we're at the home of Mathias Ham, who was a very early lead miner and digger and an early lead smelter owner in this area, originally in southwestern Wisconsin. But he came into this part of what's now the city of Dubuque about 1830. And he wanted to start a town called Eagle Point, which is a neighborhood of the city of Dubuque. On the grounds here, he built a log cabin. The log cabin that we have on the grounds over there is not his. It's a whole different great story to tell. But he was able, about 1839, with money that he had earned from digging for the lead ore and smelting it, to be able to build this portion of his house. This section, this is actually the original front door for his small stone cottage for the land here, because he did own several hundred acres of land that was farmland right along the river here. So when you look at this stone, and you can see that it is cut a little bit differently from what we will see for the rest of his mansion. And one of the great things about this is that we'll have visitors who will notice the color of the stone. And there are outcroppings of rock that have this bluish grayish tint to it in this region. And there are places where you can see it. So this is from the region, as is the stone from the rest of his mansion as well. So we're going to jump ahead from 1839 to 1856, 1857, where this was no longer the front door of his house, but rather the rest of it, the house that he finished building by 1856, 1857. The front door is around the corner. So that would be where we would have met Mr. Ham and his family, at the front door as callers. So Mr. Ham added to his original stone cottage in the mid-1850s. The architect for this part of his house was John Francis Ragg, who was the designer for several other prominent buildings that are in parts of Dubuque and elsewhere in the Midwest. It's an Italianate-style villa. Some of the features of this include the design of the roof, the cupola, the design of the front doors, the porches, the verandas, etc. Because in this front door, where callers would have come to visit, above it is the original stained glass window to the house, the only one there. So the house had only been owned by Mathias Ham's family for several decades, and then 1911 the property here passed into the ownership of the city of Dubuque, which was by that time developing Eagle Point Park, and they have their park department buildings over here. So the Historical Society takes care of the museum aspect, and the Dubuque Park Department takes care of the grounds for us. So one of the features of Mathias Ham's mansion is this veranda. This was reserved for the family and their callers. There is a lower part to this as well that was for where workmen who came here, occasional boarders, and then occasional people who took their meals in the rooms that are in the lower level. So of all the exterior changes to the mansion over the decades, several that were done have been reversed. Some viewers here might remember having seen some dormer windows on the top of the house. Those dormer windows weren't original, but they were removed for the restoration of the mansion. But here, the sidewalk around the veranda here was raised during the time when WPA workmen were up at Eagle Point Park building the pavilions and the pathways up there. So this was headquarters on the first floor for the park department at that time. So this part of Mathias Ham's house is again the original stone cottage from about 1839. And with the cuts of the stone here, it is a little bit rougher compared to what was added on in 1856, 1857. But this is a great spot to be able to see the difference. The stone again is native to this area. This door leads to the kitchen that was part of the house at this floor. And then down here on the veranda, we do use the veranda for several purposes. The annual ice cream social is where we serve the ice cream and cake down here. We also have school groups come here for Pioneer Days to the grounds, and we use that for some of their activities. And we do have people that come to the area here who will take photos for their weddings or their graduation photos as well. So the grounds is very friendly for that.
Hello, my name is Heather Green, and I am the Interpretation Program Manager at the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium, and also here at the Mathias Ham Historic Site. So welcome to our kitchen here at the Mathias Ham Historic Site. We will be playing one of my absolute favorite games, which is Guess That Victorian Instrument. Not musical instrument, utensils. Let's go with utensils. Let's start with food. So here I have what appears to be plastic. And many people, when I say, what is this? They immediately go, oh, well, it's definitely a piece of plastic, or it's definitely fish scales. And it is neither of those things. I'll give you a hint. Break off a piece of this, put it in boiling water, add some fresh fruit juice, put it into something that looks like this, pour it in, set that aside, and let it chill. In a few hours, what do you have? Yes, it is a Jell-O mold. You end up with a jellied fruit. This is the gelatin. This is what makes Jell-O jiggle. It used to be sold in sheets like this here in the United States, and it is still sold this way in many countries around the world. So if you ever see this, that is gelatin. Today, our Jell-O is very sweet. Back then, about 150, 200 years ago, and even a little bit earlier than that, you wouldn't have sweet foods very often. Inside this blue package is very special, very expensive, white sugar. It's called a sugar cone or a sugar loaf. This, because it is so small, you know that it is highly refined, which makes it a very high, good quality of sugar, and it is also very expensive. So when you see the blue cone, you know you're getting good stuff. This is clearly not a lot of sugar compared to what we use today. So this is not what you would use for your everyday baking. This is not what you would use in your everyday cakes or sweetening your tea in the morning. This was used for special occasions, for holidays, for a very special guest you wanted to impress. And I know you're looking at this cone going, how am I going to get sugar off of a solid cone like that? Well, conveniently enough, we have this pair of sugar tongs. You scrape down the sides, and voila, at the end you have granulated sugar. And you can put that in your bowl, put that out for whoever you're trying to impress when they come over for tea that you can afford white, refined sugar. So let's say they're not coming over for tea, they're actually coming over for dinner. You're gonna host a dinner for your friends or for the neighbors you want to impress. In the Victorian era, you will have a dish that is very specific and has one use. You will have a fork or a spoon that is very specific and it only has one use. In the Victorian times, the way that people controlled what they saw as the chaos of the outside world was to control the inside. And so inside the home, every plate had a use. Every fork had a use. So we're going to start actually with these right here because these are the easy ones. This is a plate that holds oysters. You see it's got a little divot right there for your oysters, and this is your oyster fork. You would never use this to eat your salad. You would never use this to eat your meat. This is your oyster fork. And so this is where it gets interesting, because I've got two forks that look almost exactly the same, but they're only slightly different. And one is heavy, it's got two thick tines on the end. This one is just ever so slightly heavier than other forks and the forks we use today most of the time. And this is your meat fork. This is what you use. It's a very substantial fork, so you use it to eat a substantial food. At the very end of your meal though, usually your desserts are not very heavy, but occasionally your dessert's going to have a crust on it. So if you looked carefully at this fork, you'd see that one side is a little bit thicker and the others are just normal tines of a fork. And so when you're holding it, because of course they're going to train you to be right-handed even if you're not, you will hold that and you've got the little bit of a heavier tine can dig into the very crust of a pie. This is your pie fork because it's got just that little bit there to get the pie crust broken. This one, we do still have a lot of these around today. This comes with a lot of silverware sets. It is your butter knife. But did you also know there was a jam knife as well? This one, a little bit different, a little bit wider. So it kind of looks like a flat spoon. This is your jam spoon or your jam knife. And it is meant for scooping out the jam, and it slides right off onto your toast, onto your bread. Absolutely wonderful. My father used to tell me, why don't you just use a spoon to get out your jam? And I'm like, because it gets stuck inside there, but if your spoon is flat, it just slides right off. These are fantastic. This one, a lot of people look at it and think, wow, that looks like a fish fork. And you've got the right idea. This is a very small fork. It's very lightweight. The tines are flat and sharp. They're a little bit pointed. In the Victorian era, into England was introduced a new salad from France. France decided that the way they wanted to eat their vegetables was they would take some lettuce and they would put a little oil and vinaigrette dressing on it, and that was their new salad. It was called a French salad in England, but if you've got a new salad, this kind of fork, you ever tried to pick up your lettuce with a fork like this and you're just stabbing? It's not working. So they decided, they came up with these very flat, very pointed, it's spread out. It's great for picking up leafy vegetables. And that's why it looks a lot like a fish fork as well. It looks a lot like for flaky foods and those things that are hard to pick up with your normal fork. Our last spoon is not for eating, it is a serving spoon, and it's got holes in it. It's a tiny little spoon, and just for holes. We have slotted spoons today. It serves the exact same purpose, but it is only meant for one food. This is your olive spoon. You put it in your olives and it drains the juice out, and then all you have left is your little olive there. And again, slotted spoons today, we do the same thing. It's just to drain the juice out of whatever food we're trying to get at. Let's move on to this fun utensil. Now it looks like, it's got a hole in it right here, it's pointed, got a handle. It looks like a candle snuffer. It's not a candle snuffer. It is for food, it is a serving utensil. And I'm gonna twist that a little bit, and inside when I twist it, there's two little scrapers that scrape along the outside of this bell-shaped portion. So what is it for? If you guessed yet, I'll be right back. This usually gives it away much quicker. This is a hand crank ice cream machine. And after you've cranked your ice cream, you need a way to serve it. This is your ice cream scoop. So you can just scoop it out, and if it gets stuck on the sides, it just scrapes along, and the ice cream comes out, usually in a beautiful little cone shape like that, unless it's freshly made ice cream, in which case it's softer, and it doesn't matter what it looks like because it's delicious. So I'll do one more. We've got one more thing, and I'll move that back out of the way so we can see. This is made out of iron. It is quite heavy. It looks a lot like a doorstop. However, when it's working, it is a beautiful dog-shaped nutcracker. You put your nut right in the dog's mouth, and the tail moves up and down, and his jaw would squeeze shut, crack your nut open, and then you could get at the meat inside. That is a novelty nutcracker in the shape of a dog. Thank you for coming to our kitchen today and for playing Name That Victorian Utensil with us. I hope you have a good day. Thank you.